Kirsten. Today we're going to talk about mixing up your own colors and how that applies to your little spring pig painting. So we need to come up with a peachy pinky color, and you'll notice on step 1, if you look closely, it's at least 2 shades of this peachy pink, potentially 3, but at least 2 shades. So you're going to need a red and either a brown, or if you have kind of a tan sand color, this would actually be a great way to start. But I don't know if you have that, so I'm going to use brown because that's the more difficult way. If you're using a tan like I just showed you, you just need to add a little tiny bit of red to it. When you have your red, you want to make sure that it's a primary red. So my shade of red is called Permanent Red. I have another one. I don't remember the name of it, but it's got a little more orange in it. You don't want any orange in your pink or in your red, and you don't want any brownish tones in your red because we're already adding brown, and we don't want it to become overwhelmingly dark, and we don't want it to become overwhelmingly muddy. That's more than I need. So see the amount of brown? I probably need half of that to add to this white to get to the color that I want. And then we'll put just a little bit of this red here too. Probably about the same amount, although number 1, it came out faster, but number 2, we'll probably use a little more red than we would the brown. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my palette knife and I'm just gonna dip it in the brown and get just a little bit and start mixing that into the white. And you can see that little bit of brown goes a very long way. This may be actually too much brown, but we'll see. We can always add more white, but then you end up wasting that paint. So when you're working with acrylic, keep in mind that you're gonna need to put this in a container that has a lid in order to save it for the next step. So if you're mixing up too much, you wanna have something to put it in when you're done. If you're mixing up just enough, you wanna know the ratios that you used so you know how much of each color you need. So I'm just gonna keep mixing, and then I'm gonna grab just a little bit of that red, a little more of that red maybe, and start mixing. And so this is how you'll start. You're just gonna start experimenting. What kind of color will this give me? If I grab these colors and I mix them up together, will it be near the peach color that I want? I think I've used far too much brown, but you can see it is kind of a peachy color. It's more pink, so I use too much red and too much brown. So what we can do, let's just scrape that all up and put it in one spot. Clean the palette knife. And then we'll get a little more white. And we'll put it right here. Need a little more than that. And then this time, you could, if this is closer to what you're looking for, you could totally just grab a little bit of that and add that to the white, but it's actually pretty far from what I want. So I'm just gonna do white or pink, red first to get to the pink. Now, you could also add a lighter brown so you don't get that muddy color like I got the first time. But this is what I want you to be doing for your colors. I want you to work on combining the colors you do have to get to a color that you need. So this is a nice pink here. It's probably a little too red. So I'm gonna add a little bit more white, and then we're just gonna add just the slightest touch of brown, and we'll mix that all in. So for the brown, I'm literally gonna get just the tiniest little bit. Just enough to kind of darken it down just a little bit. You could also try a yellow. That might actually work a little bit better. It'll give you kind of an orangish tone, which I think would work well for this. So again, we still have this very pink tone. There's that brown not mixed in. So that's why we kind of squish it around to kind of mix it all in together. All right, let's try adding just a little bit of a very light yellow to that. Let me grab my yellow. Okay, so you could experiment here. I've got a yellow medium and a lemon yellow. I think this lemon yellow is gonna be a little bit too yellow. So I'm gonna go with my medium. But again, we only need the tiniest little touch of this to get to the color that we want. So put a little bit on your palette. And I'm gonna take my palette knife and just pick up just the tiniest little bit of that. Before you start mixing this in, look at the back and the front of that knife to make sure you didn't accidentally grab more than you wanted. I think this is gonna work very nicely. All right, so we got much more of a peachy kind of tone here. I think that will work. So just a touch of yellow will really do a lot to get you there. You could still use that brown like I did here, but very, very lightly add that brown. You don't want too much brown. All right, so now I've got my color. I'm gonna put it on my pig, and then I will be back to show you the end of step 1 because I have full confidence that you know how to do step 1. All right, so I have finished step 1. I wanted to show you my palette. So I started out with that base pink that I showed you how we mixed. It may have been actually a little bit dark, so you might want to use a little more white. And then when I needed to do some of the shading, there is some shading in the very first layer. I added just a touch of yellow and a touch of the red. Very, very little. You want to add just a tiny bit at a time to slowly darken it. And remember, especially with reds, when this color dries, it's going to dry a lot darker than it looks on the palette. So keep that in mind as you're mixing up your colors. Okay, Kirsten, here is the end of step 1. So I just wanted to show you a few things. First of all, I obviously used the background that I did for our saturation experiment, so the whole thing is blue. So I went ahead and put a coat of white over the blue. I did not do these sections so that I knew where the lines were for those. But if you have a part of your blue that goes into where the pig should be, put down a small coat of white, light coat of white. You don't want a lot of brush strokes in it. Like you could see the variation in the saturation here. That's not actual brush strokes. That's just a change in the saturation of the white. So that'll be easy to cover, but if it was a brush stroke, it would really stand out. So put some white down any place where the blue comes over the edge, and you can touch that up before you do the pink. And then I wanted to point out, number 1, the color that I mixed up, I think is drying a little bit on the dark side. So I'll probably do one more coat with it just a little bit lighter than that because I feel like it could be a little less pink, especially when you look at the picture, the reference photo. It's almost peach. The pink is very, very faint. So I put too much red in that, I think. But I wanted to talk about some of the shading. There's a little bit of shading here on the chin. There's more shading here on his shoulder. And I did these brush strokes in the direction of that part of the body. So this part of the body is going to flow this way. This is kind of the arm, so it's flowing this way and this way. This I followed her and just did kind of a straight. It probably should be straighter than that, but I can fix that with when I do this section. As you start to do more of the shading, pay really close attention to the shades that she used. This down here is going to get very pink. It starts out with this kind of peachy, darker peachy color, and then it becomes very, very pink. So watch for that. The nose here is one shade of pink and the mouth is a different, and there is shading here on the nose. So look at that closely and watch for the same thing on the ears, on the inside of the ears. And we want to make sure that this pig looks 3D and not flat. So really watch for where she puts her shading. I did put a little bit darker pink here, and then just a touch, which is hard to see because of the reflection, on the tip of the ear there, and then a little bit over here, not much. Because if you make mistakes at this stage in the game, it's going to be a lot more work to go back and fix them. So there is my step 1. I look forward to seeing your completed project. I do not anticipate doing more videos, but if you have questions, let me know and I can always pop in and do another quick video. Talk to you later.